We begin the readout tonight with good trouble in the fight against voter suppression, just days after the one-year anniversary of the death of the late, great John Lewis, a civil rights icon who spent his entire life fighting for human and civil rights, beaten as a young man marching for the rights of Black Americans across the South and across the country to vote and have that vote counted. Now, Lewis's home state, Georgia, is at the epicenter of the Republican assault on voting rights, home to one of the nation's most draconian voter suppression laws, implemented after Black and brown voters in Georgia gave Joe Biden the presidency and Democrats control of the United States Senate. A lot of people were hailing Lewis on this anniversary, including Arizona conservative Democratic Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who got quite a bit of blowback for calling Lewis her dear friend and, quote, personal hero. Since Sinema and West Virginia's Joe Manchin stand in opposition to ending the legislative filibuster, guaranteeing that voting rights legislation will fail in the face of Republican obstruction. Meanwhile, other Democrats were making good trouble in Atlanta today. For the first time in 20 years, the Senate Rules Committee held a field hearing, starting with impassioned remarks from Georgia Senator, the Reverend Raphael Warnock, John Lewis's pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church.
Sadly, what we're seeing in Georgia is an attempt to deny certain people the ability to have their voices heard in our democracy. As I've said time and time again, some people don't want some people to vote. Congress must take action on voting rights, and we have no time to spare. There is nothing more important for us to do this Congress. We Americans live in a great house that democracy built. And right now, that house is on fire.
Not a single Republican senator participated in today's field hearing. Minority Leader McConnell poked his head out of his shell long enough, however, to call the proceeding a, quote, silly stunt. On Sunday, Rules Committee Chairwoman Amy Klobuchar held a roundtable with Stacey Abrams, hearing from voters about obstacles to the ballot. Speaking to NBC's Garrett Haake before today's hearing, Klobuchar took aim at Republicans' ongoing complicity with the big lie.
I believe this is an even bigger deal than just party versus party. This is literally a quest to save our democracy, because once you start disenfranchising people, then people lose faith.
For her part, Stacey Abrams' voting rights organization, Fair Fight Action, is launching version 2.0 of its Hot Call Summer campaign, asking supporters to call their senators every day until they take action to pass the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Restoration Act. And joining me now is Stacey Abrams, founder of Fair Fight Action and author of Our Time Is Now, which is available now in paperback. And Stacey, it's always great to talk with you. Let's talk about what the field hearing that took place today means in practical terms.
Well, first and foremost, it's an opportunity to once again set the record straight. There's been an attempt by opponents of S1 to be, either intentionally reductive or intentionally obtuse. This is not a question of a simple change to the law. This is about a series of laws being passed across the country, starting in Georgia, to reduce access to the right to vote for inconvenient voters, voters of color, young people, disabled voters, elderly voters, poor voters, but largely targeting communities of color that outperformed in the 2020 and 2021 runoffs here in Georgia.
And, everyone seems to understand that we think in the Democratic Party, which is the party that, that is the preferred choice of the majority of voters of color. And yet, despite the fact that you have fellow Democratic senators in Georgia doing a field hearing today, Kyrsten Sinema is tweeting about how much she loves and respects John Lewis. I mean, I will echo Michael Harriot, who said it's a sure funny way of showing that he's your hero by not reflecting any of the things that he believes in. And Bishop Barber said the same thing, called it shameful to claim you honor John Lewis while you block the work that he's trying to do. And Harriet also pointed out that it was difficult to find in Googling Ms. Kyrsten Sinema's background any note of her having revered John Lewis. What do you make of the Democrats who love to quote John Lewis the way people quote Dr. King, but are literally doing absolutely nothing? Because S1 ain't going to pass as long as Sinema and Manchin refuse to change the filibuster.
Well, I think that we have to recognize there are two layers to this challenge. The first layer, and the successful layer, was getting 50 Democratic senators on the record supporting a version of the For the People Act that can affect these laws and can save our democracy. The second step then is, what do we do mechanically to make it happen? I believe that the first step is either a carve out to the filibuster or a reduction in the threshold or returning it to its original form, which is the talking filibuster. And so I do call on every single senator, both those who have declared out loud that they oppose that they want to support the filibuster, and those who are being quiet about it, that this is a time for action. That yes, we appreciate your reverence for and your respect for John Lewis and the work of saving democracy, but now is the urgent time for action. What happened in Texas, what's happening right now, what will happen in Ohio, what will happen in North Carolina, what will happen in Pennsylvania is not endemic to the South. It is endemic to authoritarians who do not want to see inconvenient voters cast their ballots and speak their minds. And that has to be the call to arms. This is not simply about one moment. This is about the foundations of our democracy, and they are in peril. And it's time now for every single member of the U.S. Senate, Democrats and Republicans and independents, to declare their allegiance to our democracy as opposed to their parties.
And thank you for pointing that out. The only difference between the South, in the South, is that it's where half of African Americans are and where there are big concentrations of black voters, and that it's controlled by Republicans for the most part. For people who want to participate in Hot Call Summer, I've had this question asked to me a lot. I think it's really important to do it. Explain to them, because the John Lewis Act and the S1 are very different things. Can you just sort of lay out for us what are the differences? What should people understand about how these two bills are different?
So first of all, we want to thank the 40,000 calls that were made during the first phase of Hot Call Summer. And we encourage folks to dial again, 888-453-3211. But here's the difference. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act is designed to say that for new bills that would be proposed after its passage, those bills cannot take effect without being pre-cleared by the Justice Department if you are in one of the states that's covered by the Voting Rights Advancement Act. That's an important piece. But before we get there, we've got to undo all the bad that's already been done. So the Voting Rights Advancement Act will stop new bad from happening once it passes. But we still have to clean up all of the terrible bills, the 28 bills that have already passed and any that pass in the interim. And that's what the For the People Act does. It says that no matter where you live in the United States, if you live in Georgia, which has good laws but terrible rules, and has now new laws that negate the effectiveness of our good rules, or you live in a state that's been allowed to suppress your vote for years, that we all have a level playing field. So we want the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act to stop new bad, but we've got to clean up the old bad. We've got to clean up the current attack on our votes by making certain we pass the For the People Act. And that means Hot Call Summer. That means calling every U.S. senator, no matter their party, because they work for you and they need to hear from you.
That is so important.
453-3211.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt the phone number. I'm going to let you give the phone number again before we go, because that is the key thing, is that people need to understand that these are two very separate things, but that John Lewis is sort of retroactive. It's sort of, or it's proactive for the future, but it wouldn't actually, because there does feel like, and I don't know if maybe this is just my perception, that there is a bit of a bait and switchish kind of thing going on. For a lot of Democrats, they're worried that Democrats are going to go ahead and use, the sort of simple 50 votes to push through things that are long-held desires of Democrats, which are all good things, passing things like the child tax credit and infrastructure that gives child care and changing Medicare and doing all of these really great things that are going to help a lot of people. But in the meantime, they're just going to give the promise of a future John Lewis Act as the thing they do for voting rights and leave S1 behind. Are you concerned that in the whole bargain that's happening in Washington, the John Lewis Act gets to be a future thing that they'll do down the road, maybe if, Manchin will let them, but that S1, which is the bill, as you said, that actually fixes the bad laws, gets left on the table?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that the first 300 pages of the For the People Act were written by John Lewis. And so the fact that his name is not attached as the title does not diminish his work on the bill. And we also have to remember that the For the People Act is a very large act, and there are going to be pieces that may be married to the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act in conversation, but we've got to remember the two separate purposes. And I think it's remembering that and calling that out and calling attention to it, because the fundamental challenge is that we have to have a U.S. Senate that recognizes that nothing else passed will hold and nothing new will happen if we lose the right to participate in our elections in 22 and 24, because that's the path we're on. This is not hyperbolic. This is an actual crisis, and we have seen precursors of this in 2018 here in Georgia, and around the country. We saw it in 2016, and we will see it on steroids in 2022 if we do not act.
The Texas Democrats who were in Washington, D.C., some of whom have actually contracted COVID while they, for their trouble, that fight, that sort of demonstrating the will to fight, is that significant in your view, the activism that we're seeing? People are in the streets. I mean, this is going to be a summer of activism around voting, very clearly from lots of different groups. In the end, do you think that winds up moving votes and getting the 50? Or if not, what's the point of it? What's the purpose in the end?
The purpose of activism, the purpose of protest is to signal to leaders the demands of the people for action. And so it is absolutely essential, especially when it's the leaders who are taking that step. Going from Texas to D.C. was not purely symbolic. It was an active declaration that they need help, that we need help. The same help has to come from average citizens making those phone calls, from young people who transformed our elections, regardless of their race. Those young people changed the outcome of the future in the United States by participating at record rates, and they are also under attack. And so we have to remember that this call to action this summer, this hot call summer, is about making sure that this conversation about democracy doesn't get pushed aside as rhetorical. We have to see it as an urgent call to action, as urgent as anything we've ever seen. Because if you want to see action on police brutality, on climate change, on poverty, on women's reproductive choice, no matter what your issue is, if you don't have the right to vote and participate in elections, it is irrelevant.
Amen. One more time for the people in the back. If you guys care about all the other things, police reform, everything else you care about, if they lock you out of the voting booth, you get none of it. Just understand that. It's the most important right. That's why John Lewis fought and bled for it. Stacey Abrams, you're the best. Thank you very much. Really appreciate everything that you're doing for this country and our democracy.